There becomes a moment in every soul's journey when the life you've built no longer fits the person you're becoming. A moment where your intuition grows louder than your fear. When the signs become impossible to ignore. When the masks begin to fall away and you realize you were never lost, you were remembering. Welcome to the Heyoka Shaman Podcast, a space for seekers, healers, empaths, mystics, survivors, and old souls navigating the path of awakening. Together, we'll explore spirituality, intuition, shadow work, healing, consciousness, energy, transformation, and what it truly means to walk between worlds. We'll have conversations about the right things that most people are afraid to talk about: the dark nights, the spiritual awakenings, the grief, the healing, the gifts, the lessons, and the profound journey of coming home to yourself. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the conditioning, the wounds, the expectations, and the fear. If you've ever felt different, if you've ever questioned reality, if you've ever known there was more waiting for you beyond the life you've been told to live, this podcast is for you. The awakening has already begun. The question is, are you ready to answer the call? I'm your host of the podcast, Haylz, founder of the Heyoka Shaman, YouTuber for the last 7 years, author, and medium. This is the Heyoka Shaman Podcast. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to talk about episode 1, our very first episode. The spiritual closet is the topic that we're going to talk about. Can't wait to dive in a little bit deeper with you on that one. It's a very personal topic for me. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Heyoka Shaman Podcast, where we explore spirituality, healing, intuition, consciousness, and what it means to walk between worlds. I'm your host, Haylz, and today we're talking about something that almost every spiritual person experiences at some point on their journey: the spiritual closet. That place where you know you're experiencing something profound. You know you're receiving signs. You know your intuition is speaking. You know you're changing, but you just don't tell anyone. And then my throat chakra is going. You don't tell anyone. You hide your books, you hide your crystals, you hide your practices, and you hide your truth. And perhaps most painful of all, you hide yourself. If you've ever felt like you had to dim your spiritual side to make others comfortable, then this episode is for you. Let's dive in. So let's talk about this. What is the spiritual closet, right? So this resonates so deeply with me on my journey because I felt like I couldn't talk about what I was going through. I felt like I couldn't be myself. I was going through this intense, profound spiritual awakening and nobody understood what the hell I was going through. So it was very intense for me to keep it all hidden. And I was definitely in the spiritual closet and, I am a very real and authentic person and I just wanted to be myself. But when, you're on a path and then other people aren't on that path and they have no idea what you're talking about, you kind of just go, I need to choose my audience, right? So this is a very real experience. The spiritual closet is the place many awakening souls find themselves when they begin remembering who they truly are. Maybe you've started meditating. Maybe you've had an intuitive experience. Maybe you've experienced synchronicities that are impossible to explain. Maybe you've had dreams that later came true. Maybe you've felt energy, or maybe you've connected with spirit. Maybe you've simply begun questioning everything you've been taught, and suddenly you realize not everyone around you is going to understand. So you become selective. Like I said, know your audience, right? Choose your audience, right? Not everyone around you is going to understand what you're going through. So you stay quiet, you edit yourself, you become two versions of yourself, the public version and the authentic version. The version that exists behind closed doors. The spiritual closet isn't always built by fear. Sometimes it's built by survival. And I want to talk about why we hide. Most people don't hide their spirituality because they're weak. They hide it because at some point they learned it wasn't safe to be seen. Maybe your family mocked spirituality. Maybe religion taught you fear. Maybe your friends thought it was weird. Maybe a partner made fun of you. Maybe you've been called crazy, woo-woo, delusional, tinfoil hat girl, all those things. Too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too different. The truth is, many spiritually gifted people spent years learning how to fit in. They became experts at reading rooms, experts at adapting, experts at making themselves acceptable. And that is the basis for this. The awakening journey asks us to stop performing. And that is terrifying because belonging often feels safer than authenticity. So I'm going to talk about my own spiritual closet. There was a time in my life where I hid almost everything. I would have spiritual experiences and keep them to myself. I'd have intuitive knowings and say nothing. I'd feel energy move through my body and wonder if anyone else experienced it. I remember thinking, what if people think I've lost my mind? Because awakening doesn't always happen neatly. Sometimes it arrives as chaos. Sometimes it arrives as grief. And sometimes it arrives as a complete dismantling of your old identity. And when you're going through that process, validation from others becomes incredibly tempting. But eventually I realized something, that people who don't understand your path were never meant to validate it. Your soul validates it. Your experiences validate it. Your intuition validates it. So I want to talk about the cost of hiding yourself, the cost of hiding, right? Let's talk about the hidden cost of staying in the spiritual closet. And I did this for a while. I had two identities. I had my previous self, the businesswoman, the entrepreneur, the one who had this successful career. And then I had my spiritual out of the closet self. And, for a very long time, I hid my face from my YouTube channel. And it wasn't until I had 10,000 subscribers that I was like, maybe I could show my face. Maybe people are going to accept me because I've got 10,000 people that think what I'm doing is all right. And, for a really long time, I was like, no, I just didn't show my face. And so the cost of this is not just about hiding crystals. It's about hiding your voice, hiding your truth, hiding your gifts. And every time we deny who we are, we create internal conflict. One part of us wants freedom. The other part wants safety. And those two forces begin pulling against each other. Eventually, it becomes exhausting. You start feeling disconnected and torn between two worlds, unfulfilled, misunderstood, not because people don't know you, but because you've never truly shown them. You cannot be fully loved for a version of yourself that isn't real. And that is one of the hardest lessons on the spiritual path. I want to talk about the Heyoka mirror now. As a Heyoka empath, one of the lessons I've learned is that authenticity itself is medicine. The Heyoka archetype that we talk about through this platform doesn't fit nearly into neat boxes. It challenges norms, it questions assumptions, it disrupts illusions, not to create chaos, but to reveal truth. The spiritual closet often exists because we fear rejection. Yet the irony is that people who resonate with us can only find us once we stop hiding. Your authenticity becomes a lighthouse. When you stop pretending, you give others permission to stop pretending too. And that is where true connection begins. So I want to talk about stepping out of the spiritual closet, because I want to be clear. Coming out of the spiritual closet doesn't mean standing on a street corner telling everyone your life story. Discernment is wisdom. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. But there's a difference between discernment and self-abandonment. Ask yourself these questions. Where am I shrinking? Where am I hiding? What truth am I afraid to speak? What gift am I afraid to own? Who would I be if I stopped apologizing for my spirituality? Because your path doesn't require permission. Your awakening doesn't require approval. And your gifts do not require validation. They simply require your willingness to honor them. So it's interesting that this is all coming up because, I had a mentor that I worked with and I thought she was a mentor. And she told me to create a podcast not on any of my platforms based on her own fear of being seen. And I have now gone back and thought about, why I did that. I just followed her lead. And I wasn't being true and authentic to myself because this is my spiritual platform. This is the channel that I've been, creating from. And I don't understand why I allowed myself to be guided to a place where no one could find my podcast. So I feel that I was still in the spiritual closet a little bit by even being guided down that path. And it's time for me to hold that mirror up and go, why was I too scared, just to put it out there? Why was I too scared to come out of the spiritual closet and just create this podcast and just be me? And I think the closing message in relation to this, and if you're listening to this and you've been hiding, I want you to know something. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not alone. Every healer, every mystic, every intuitive, every spiritual teacher has stood at the doorway of the spiritual closet at some point, wondering whether it's safe to be seen, wondering whether it's safe to just be themselves. And eventually they discovered that the greatest risk wasn't being judged. The greatest risk was abandoning themselves. So perhaps your invitation today is simple. Take one more step. Sorry, I just heard my phone go off then. And that's usually confirmation. So perhaps today your invitation is simple. Just take one small step. Share one little truth. Own one of your gifts. Trust one intuitive nudge. And remember, the version of you that you've been hiding may be the exact version the world needs to meet. So thank you for joining me, Haylz, the founder of the Heyoka Shaman, on the Heyoka Shaman Podcast. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who may still be hiding their gifts from the world. As we close the first episode, I want to leave you with a thought. What if the parts of yourself you've been hiding are not your weakness? What if they're your medicine? What if your sensitivity isn't something to overcome, but something to honor? And what if your intuition isn't leading you astray, but guiding you home? For so many of us, the spiritual journey begins in silence, in secret, behind closed doors, hidden from the world. But there comes a moment when your soul grows louder than your fear. A moment when staying hidden becomes more painful than being seen. And perhaps that's why you found this podcast today. Not by accident, but as a reminder that you are not alone on this path. A reminder that there is nothing wrong with you. A reminder that the very things that make you different may be the things that make you powerful. So this week, I invite you to take one step out of the spiritual closet, trust one intuitive nudge, speak one truth you've been holding back, honor one part of yourself you've been taught to hide. Because your awakening doesn't require permission. Your gifts don't require validation. And your soul doesn't need the world's approval to become what it came here to be. Thank you for walking this path with me today. Until next time, protect your energy, heal what calls for your attention, and align with the truth of who you are. And remember, the journey isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been. I'm Haylz, and this is the Heyoka Shaman Podcast. I'll meet you between the worlds.